A single acre of Pennsylvania Dutch ground in 1897 fed Jacob Hertzler's whole family through the coldest winter of the decade without 1 pound of store-bought sugar crossing his threshold. Jacob pulled a perennial root out of the garden soil in October that tasted exactly like an apple and a spoonful of honey mixed together, and he used it to sweeten his family's porridge, his winter parsnip stew, and his grandchildren's mouths straight through until the spring thaw. He grew a full row of it behind the hen house, in ground he never once fertilized. It came back on its own the next year, off the roots he left behind. Neighbors up and down the valley grew the same row. Every farm did. Today, most Americans have never heard the name of that plant. You could walk into any garden center in this country tomorrow and ask for it by name and get a blank look back. The seed racks do not carry it. The county extension does not teach it. The nurseries do not stock it. But here is the twist. The plant did not quit growing. It did not die out. It did not stop tasting like apple and honey. The United States Department of Agriculture still keeps its seed in a vault in Colorado. A handful of old gardeners in 3 states still have it in the ground behind their houses. It just quietly left the shelf one year, and nobody came looking for it. The record now says the reason it left had nothing to do with the plant. Some of what I'm about to count down, the seed companies pruned off the shelf on purpose, because there was no money in a plant you only ever bought once. Number 14, the Livestock Conservancy tells you there might be 500 birds of it left alive in this whole country. You will meet it near the bottom of the list. Number 6, the United States Congress passed a law in 1970 that made sure the seed you grow now belongs to somebody else. And I need you to hear how that one worked. And number 2, the root that tastes like apple and honey. A land-grant seed vault still keeps it because almost nobody plants it anymore. None of these faded because they quit working, friend. They faded because somebody sells you what your grandfather grew for free. That is not on you. They are good at making you need them. Before we go on, there's something coming for this country, and the news won't say a word about it till it's already on your doorstep. It comes down to one number, 3 days. That's what the stores hold for you. My grandfather Eli's pantry held a winter, and the difference was never money, it was knowing. I'm Silas Mercer, 7th generation on this ridge, and before Eli died, he made me swear that knowing wouldn't die with me. So I set it down, 904 pages of it in one book, silasmercer.shop. Links below. All right, back to it. Number 25. Your great-grandmother had a patch of a plant called Good King Henry growing in the shady corner of the yard where nothing else would grow. And it fed her family greens from March straight through October every year without her replanting it once. You cook it exactly like spinach. The seed cost her nothing after the first packet because the same crown came back every spring on its own. Now the store charges you $4 for a plastic bag of pre-washed spinach that lasts 3 days in the fridge. Good King Henry left the seed racks around 1955, quietly. The catalog companies pruned the perennial vegetables in favor of annuals you had to buy again every year. Cornell's extension still lists it. 1 packet, 1 shady corner, greens for life. That one, they only quit selling. This next one, they made it against the law to save its seed. Number 24. Reed's, Yellow Dent, and Bloody Butcher fed the American South and Midwest for 150 years. An open-pollinated corn that ground into meal, fattened a hog, fed a chicken flock, and drop seed for next year off the same ear. Your grandfather saved a bushel of the best cobs off the field every fall and never bought corn seed once his whole life. Then in 1930, a man named Henry Wallace commercialized hybrid corn seed through Pioneer Hybrid. By 1960, almost nobody in this country grew a corn that would come true from its own kernel. The Federal Germplasm Bank still keeps reeds. Southern Exposure still sells it. Grind it for cornbread. Feed it to the flock. Save the ear. One planting, seed for a lifetime. Eli wrote this one down in 1948. He never bought corn. That corn feeds a whole homestead. This next one feeds your soil for you. Number 23, whippoorwill peas, crowder peas, black-eyed peas. The cowpea fed the American South through summers so hot nothing else would set fruit, and it left the ground it grew in richer than it found it. A cowpea pulls nitrogen out of the air and fixes it in the soil through the roots. Your great-grandfather rotated a bean row into a corn row and cut his fertilizer bill to zero. The store now charges you $30 for a 50-pound bag of ammonium nitrate that does what the pea did for free. Cowpeas came off the catalog racks in the 1960s when Ralston Purina and the fertilizer companies convinced farmers a bag of chemistry was easier than a rotation. Clemson still tests the old varieties. A packet feeds you and feeds the ground. Never a bill for either. That legume feeds the dirt. The next one feeds you 3 ways off one plant. Number 22. Turkey red wheat was brought to Kansas in 1874 by Mennonite immigrants in the pockets of their coats, and it fed the American breadbasket for 80 years off seed that came true every fall. A family grew a 1/4 acre and ate bread all winter. Then in 1970, the Plant Variety Protection Act let seed companies patent grain. By the late 1970s, a farmer who saved his own wheat seed could get sued for it. Turkey red almost vanished. The Kansas Wheat Commission and small millers like Heartland Mill brought it back in the 2000s. It grinds into a bread flour the store now charges you $9 a loaf for. A pound of saved seed plants a garden row and gives you flour and next year's seed. That is not a trick. That is what wheat used to do. That was grain. The next thing they got you paying for was the water that falls out of the sky. Number 21. Every farmhouse Eli Mercer's generation grew up in had a cistern under the porch or a barrel at the downspout, and the family drank, cooked, washed, and watered the garden off rain the sky sent free. The Federal Soil Conservation Program taught cistern construction into the 1940s. Then rural water utilities extended out through the 1950s and 1960s, and the meter took over. Now the store charges you $1.50 for a bottle of what falls on your roof every storm. Texas A&M Extension still publishes plans. A 500-gallon barrel off a shed roof waters a whole garden through July. Check your county before you drink it. The one part you do not skip is a first flush diverter and a screened lid. The sky pays no bill. Eli's cistern held 800 gallons and never ran dry. That is water-free. The next one is fertilizer-free. Number 20. A single Nubian doe on a 1/4 acre gives a family a gallon of milk a day for 10 months of the year, off pasture and browse and the scraps from your kitchen. She kids every spring. One more animal, more milk, meat if you want it. The store now charges you $5 for a gallon of milk that came from a cow she never met. Grocery chains crowded the family dairy off the map through the 1950s and 1960s. The A&P and Kroger consolidated milk supply out of 6 or 7 big co-ops, and the backyard goat became a hobby, not a source. The Livestock Conservancy still tracks the old breeds. I will be straight with you, friend. A milk goat ties you down morning and night, twice a day, no days off. But she will kill your dairy bill and hand you a kid every spring for free. Eli's grandfather kept 2, always. That was milk. The next one, they told you it was ornamental. First pattern break, friend. Here is where it stops being quaint and starts being the reason the seed catalogs got so thin. Everything I have named so far, somebody had to make sure it left the shelf, so you would walk into their store instead. And we are only a quarter of the way down. Number 14, the countdown bird, almost gone. Number 19, your great-grandmother rendered a year's cooking fat off one hog every November and never bought a can of shortening. A hog gives 30 to 40 pounds of leaf lard and back fat, and lard rendered clean in a low oven keeps a year in a cool cellar. Then in 1911, Crisco marketed a hydrogenated cottonseed shortening as cleaner than lard. And by the 1950s, a generation had never seen fat come off an animal. The store now charges you $6 for a can of oil that has never been near a hog. United States Department of Agriculture nutrition data reversed itself. Lard is not the villain anymore. Home butchery stays category level here, friend. The honest end of raising your own meat is a skill, not a spectacle. A hog fed on scraps costs you nothing you are not already throwing away. That is the fat. The next one is the sugar. Number 18. Before the cane sugar refiners took over the American table in the late 1800s, half the South and the whole Appalachian Range grew sweet sorghum, a cane you crushed with a horse-driven mill and boiled down into a molasses-dark syrup that sweetened biscuits, oatmeal, and coffee for a year. 1 acre gave 100 gallons of syrup. Your great-grandfather's syrup mill was the fall social event of the county. Then C&H and Domino and the beet sugar consolidations of the 1900s put the syrup mill out of business. And by 1970, you could not find a working one within 100 miles. Muddy Pond sorghum in Tennessee still runs. A packet of seed grows a bed. You can crush it by hand in small batches. Sorghum on your grits, free forever. Eli wrote it down in 1952. That is sweet. The next thing is even sweeter and even more forgotten. Number 17. Muscadines grew wild across the American South before any European vine ever crossed the ocean, and every farm ran an arbor of them along the smokehouse wall. Grapes for eating, grapes for jelly, grapes for wine, and vines that lived 100 years without spray, without pruning, without a nurseryman. Then the wine industry standardized on European grape varieties, and the muscadine got reclassified as ornamental or wild and quietly left the nursery catalogs. The University of Georgia never stopped breeding them. A muscadine vine set once produces for 4 generations. The store now charges you $5 for a pint of grapes shipped from Chile. 1 vine, 1 arbor, 40 pounds of fruit a year, no spray, never a bill after the first cutting took root. Grapes forever off 1 vine. The next one, greens forever off 1 crown. Number 16. Salsify, the oyster plant, grew in kitchen gardens across America into the 1950s. A long taproot that tasted like a mild oyster when you fried it in butter, and it fed a family through winter out of a cellar bin. Around 1954, the federal government effectively dropped it from its commercial vegetable listings. Grocery chains would not stock it. It never came back on the seed racks. Baker Creek still sells it. The store now charges you $9 for a pint of oysters from a coast you do not live near. Grow the root instead. Now, the honest note. The wild parsnip that grows in ditches looks similar, and its sap will burn you. So grow salsify in a bed you know. That is the ditch cousin. The next one is the real answer to the title. Number 15. The sunchoke fed indigenous farmers across the eastern woodlands centuries before your family got here, and it fed the Depression through. A tuber that comes back every year off whatever you leave in the ground, in soil so poor nothing else will grow. One planting, tubers forever. Then Earl Butts told American farmers in 1971 to plant fence row to fence row in corn and soybeans, and the perennial tuber became a weed. Cornell Small Farms still trials sunchokes. The store now charges you $7 a pound for the tuber in the specialty aisle. Grow a bed at the back of the yard nothing else wants. Roast 'em, fry 'em, feed 'em to the pigs. The plant does not need you. Eli called them poor ground potatoes. That is the tuber. The ground grows on its own. The next thing on this list you would swear was a tree, and it grew wild in your county. Number 14. Here we are, friend, the one I told you almost nobody has got left. The Java hen and the buckeye. Dual-purpose American breeds bred in the 1800s to forage their own feed off a yard, lay 200 eggs a year, and dress out big enough for the Sunday table. Then in 1948, the Chicken of Tomorrow contest picked a Cornish cross bird that grew twice as fast on a bag of feed, and the whole heritage flock got walked to the back of the barn. The Livestock Conservancy in Pittsburgh lists the Java as critically endangered. A few hundred breeding birds left in the whole country. Your grandmother's hen worked for her feed. The industrial bird cannot. A buckeye on your scraps and yard bugs lays through the year and costs you nothing after the chicks. Set 8 hens. Never buy an egg again. That is the bird that feeds herself. The next thing feeds you and your bees. Number 13. Now here's the piece nobody tells you about a laying flock. And I need to say this straight, friend. 8 hens on a quarter acre give your family a dozen eggs a day in season, if you manage them the old way. A coop shut tight at dusk, a run rotated across grass, kitchen scraps every evening, and a handful of cracked corn in the morning. Penn State Extension trials show a heritage bird will forage 60 to 70% of her own feed off good pasture. The store charges you $4.50 a dozen. Now the grace beat. First laying flock I ever put in by myself, I forgot to shut the door one night in April, and a fox took half my pullets before sunrise. Eli did not say a word, just handed me hinges and a new hasp and asked me if I had learned it now. You will lose birds, friend. Everybody does. The old man had to teach me, same as somebody should have taught you. Kill the egg bill. Never buy a dozen again. That is your egg. The next thing gets you honey without a hive. Second pattern break, halfway down. And here's what the count tells you, friend. Everything above this line somebody sells you a version of at 4 times the price. Everything below this line, they mostly just made you forget existed. Number 2 is coming up, and it is the one on the thumbnail. Number 12. A single beehive gives a family 50 pounds of honey a year. And Eli's grandfather kept 3 colonies in log gums behind the smokehouse from 1890 until the day he died. The A&P grocery chain started stocking cheap imported honey in the 1930s, and by the 1970s, nobody kept a home hive. The store now charges you $8 a pound for honey that traveled 6,000 miles. A top bar hive you build yourself off scrap lumber runs a family in sweetener for the year and pollinates every fruit tree in the yard. The Federal Agriculture Department still lists beekeeping among its most recommended backyard operations. Set 1 hive this spring. The honest note, check your county for hive registration. Bees feed themselves. You just keep the box. That is sweet from bees. The next one is sweet from a tree that grows wild in your county. Number 11. Everybody thinks maple. Nobody remembers that box elder, black walnut, and river birch all give a sap you can boil down into syrup. Every one of them grows across the Appalachian and Midwest ranges wild, on land you do not own. Native and settler families in Vermont tapped birch as often as maple. The commercial syrup industry standardized on sugar maple, and the other 3 quietly dropped off the map. Cornell and University of Vermont maple programs both publish on the alternate trees now. The store charges you $18 a quart for maple. A single mature black walnut tapped in February gives you 2 gallons of sap a day for 2 weeks. Boil it down 40 to 1. Free sugar off a tree you did not plant. That is sweet from a tree. The next one is your winter food, kept without electricity. Number 10. The pawpaw is the largest native fruit in North America. A tree that grows wild from Kansas to the Atlantic, and its fruit tastes like a mango and a banana had a cousin who grew up in Ohio. Your great-grandfather ate them by the bagful every September. The commercial fruit industry could not ship them. They bruise inside a day. So they never made it to the grocery aisle, and a generation forgot the tree existed. Kentucky State University runs the country's only full pawpaw breeding program. The store now sells you an imported mango for $3 each. A pawpaw tree in your yard gives you 50 pounds of fruit a year for 40 years. The honest note, friend, do not eat the skin or the seeds, just the flesh. Eli's Ridge had 6 trees. That is the fruit. The next one is the way you kept it. Number 9. Every farm your great-grandfather visited had a root cellar dug into the north slope. A stone-walled room 40 degrees year-round, no electricity, that kept potatoes, cabbage, carrots, parsnips, apples, and squash from October until April with no bill and no compressor. Then in 1947, rural electrification finished, and by the 1960s, the freezer replaced the cellar. Now the store charges you $100 a month to run a chest freezer full of food that spoils the day the power drops. Rodale still publishes plans. Dig into a bank. Ventilate it. The one part you do not skip is airflow, because a sealed cellar rots the crop. A cellar keeps your winter on. No electric bill at all. Eli's father dug his in 1919. That is storage cold. The next one is storage dry. Number 8. Before pressure canners took over American kitchens in the 1950s, your great-grandmother put up a year of cabbage, cucumbers, and beans in stoneware crocks with salt and water and nothing else. Lacto-fermentation. The store charges you $9 a jar for artisan sauerkraut. Home economics classes taught fermentation into the 1960s. Then those classes were cut from public schools between 1968 and 1978, and a generation lost it. Cornell and the Agriculture Department both publish safe fermentation guides now. Cabbage, salt, crock, wait, 3 weeks in the cellar. That is the whole method. The honest note, friend. Brine covers the vegetable or mold gets in. Every jar the store sells you, you can put up yourself for pennies. Never buy a jar of kraut again. That is cabbage kept. The next one is seed kept. Number 7. They did not outlaw it. They engineered it out. The hybrid seed on the rack will not come true from its own saved seed, so you buy it again every spring forever. An open-pollinated bean saves itself off a single packet. Dry the pod, shell it, keep it in a jar in the cellar, plant it next April. Same with tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, corn, squash. Seed Savers Exchange in Iowa keeps the varieties alive. The seed rack at the big box store sells you seed the seed rack designed you to buy again next year. 1 packet of Cherokee Trail of Tears bean, saved out every fall, feeds a family for a lifetime, and never costs you $1 again. Eli wrote it down in 1961. He never bought a bean seed twice. That is the seed you save. The next one is the seed they made illegal to save. Number 6. Here we go. The one I told you the United States Congress got involved in. In 1970, the Plant Variety Protection Act let seed companies patent varieties. By the late 1970s, a farmer saving certain seeds could get sued. The heritage beans, Cherokee Trail of Tears, rattlesnake, turkey craw, moss-stoler wild goose, they slipped through because they belonged to families, not corporations. Your great-grandmother grew a 50-foot row and put up 30 pounds of dry beans in a jar. The store charges you $3 a pound for the exact same bean. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange and Seed Saver still list every one. 1 packet plants a row. 1 row feeds a family a winter of soup. Saved seed at the end plants next year. They tried to make you rent your food, friend. The bean said no. That is the bean that saves itself. The next thing saves your soil. Third pattern break, friend, and the last one. From here to the top of the list, we are on the crown of the count. Number 5 rebuilds the ground under your feet. Number 2 is the root off the top of this whole thing. And number 1 puts it all together. Number 5, comfrey. A plant your great-grandfather grew in the corner of the yard, roots 10 feet deep, pulling minerals up out of subsoil into leaves you cut 3 times a season and laid down as mulch. The chicken tractor moves the flock over the garden bed, and they fertilize as they scratch. Between the two, Eli's kitchen garden never took a bag of fertilizer in 80 years. Ammonium nitrate fertilizer was a wartime explosive, redirected to farm sales starting in 1947. And by 1960, the American farmer was hooked on a bag that cost him $30 for what a comfrey patch did free. Rodale Institute has documented it since the 1940s. 1 comfrey crown plants a corner. Never fertilize the garden by check again. That is your fertilizer free. The next one is your medicine cabinet's grandmother. Number 4. Your great-grandmother's herb bed had thyme, sage, rosemary, oregano, mint, chamomile, and lemon balm growing along the kitchen door, and she cooked out of it every night for 40 years. The grocery aisle now charges you $3 for a plastic clamshell of 6 leaves of basil that lasts 3 days. Home economics taught the herb garden until the classes got cut in the 1970s. Grow the bed, dry the leaves, fill a jar. I will say it plain, friend. I am not telling you it is medicine. That is not what this channel does. It is flavor. It is kitchen dignity. It is a bill the store wants you paying and does not need to. Cornell Extension still teaches it. A packet of seed, a sunny corner, herbs for a decade. That is the kitchen bed. The next one is the pantry. Number 3. A 100-foot row of Kennebec potatoes gives a family 200 pounds of potatoes for the winter. Out of ground you are not using, all seed potatoes you save from this year's harvest. The Irish and the American colonists both fed themselves off the potato, and your great-grandfather cellar stored 6 bushels every November. Then in the mid-1970s, home economics and agriculture classes got cut from the public schools, and a whole generation lost how to hill a potato. Maine Potato Lady and Fedco still sell the old varieties. The store now charges you $4 for a 5-pound bag. $20 of seed potato in the spring gives you the whole winter's starch. Grow the row. Save the best tubers. Plant again. Eli called it the crop that never let you down. That is the calorie staple. And now the crown of this list, the one on the top of this whole count. Number 2, skirret. Say it, skirret. A perennial root vegetable your great-great-grandmother grew in kitchen gardens from Pennsylvania to the Carolinas. And when you pull it out of the ground in October and eat it raw, it tastes like an apple and a spoonful of honey mixed together. No exaggeration, no sales pitch. That is the flavor. Siam Cisarum. The Pennsylvania Dutch grew rows of it. It was in Ferry Morse's catalog until around 1902, and then it was quietly dropped because it was perennial. You planted it once and dug divisions off the same crown for the rest of your life, and there was no money in a root you only ever bought seed for one time. The Federal National Plant Germplasm System still keeps the seed. Baker Creek carries it again. It grows wild without care, in ordinary garden soil, with no fertilizer, no spray, and no fuss. Sweetens porridge, sweetens tea, sweetens a child's mouth when they are standing next to you at the row. Eli's grandmother grew a bed of it. One planting, seed forever, never a bill. That is the root off the top of the list. And the next one, number 1, is every root, every row, every hen, every hive together. Number 1 is not a plant, friend. It is not an animal, and it is not a skill. Number 1 is every plant, every animal, and every skill above it, standing in one yard at the same time, feeding one family. The self-fed homestead. The row of skirret by the kitchen door and the sorghum out back. The 8 hens in a coop that shuts at dusk, and the goat on the lot line. The comfrey crown pulling minerals up. The bean row saving itself. The cellar under the porch. The crock of kraut on the shelf. The pawpaw tree at the edge of the woods, and the box elder tapped in February, the seed jar in the pantry, the hive in the corner. That is not a hobby. That is not a lifestyle. That is what your great-grandfather was. He was not poor, friend. He was fed, free, and beholden to no store. And Jacob Hertzler, on that 1897 Lancaster County farm, he lived to 89, on ground his son and his son's son kept working, off a table that never once needed a sugar bowl from a store. The record reversed itself because the plant kept its promise. The seed vault kept the seed. The knowledge only ever waited on somebody to come get it back. Now you know. That is the whole list. Every one of them a bill you had forgotten you could stop paying. Every one of them a piece of your grandfather's ground you can walk back onto this year. Every one of them yours again. Now hear me. I am not telling you a window box feeds a family. I am not selling you fear, and I am not selling you doom. Some of this the law in your county looks at sideways. The raw milk, the home butchery, the roof-caught water for drinking. I told you where those lines run. This is thrift and dignity, not paranoia. So here is what I need from you. Pick one. Just one. Not the whole list. One. Set a packet of Cherokee Trail of Tears bean this spring in a 50-foot row. Put 3 hens on your kitchen scraps in a coop you shut every night at dusk. Start a comfrey patch in the corner of the yard where nothing else grows. Or, if the title pulled you here, plant 1 bed of skirret and taste apple and honey out of your own ground next October. Just one, friend. That is how you start. I ran my own laying flock off scraps and yard forage 1 whole year, the way Eli kept his. Lost pullets to the fox the first spring. Learned the door. Never bought a dozen eggs the entire year after. It cost me next to nothing but the fencing. Tell me down below, did your grandparents grow skirret or salsify or any of these? What did your people keep that nobody keeps anymore? The one that gets the most comments is the one I build next. A whole homestead's worth of knowing, disappearing one old man at a time. Your granddad grew every one of these. Somebody just did not get the chance to pass it down to you. Now it is yours again. Now you are one of the keepers. Next time, I am counting down the old barnyard animals that fed a family through the Depression, with nothing but the yard and a scrap bucket, including the one hog breed that finished out on acorns, not corn, and disappeared off American farms the year the feed store figured out how to sell you a bag instead. There is a breed on that list the Livestock Conservancy says has fewer than 200 sows left alive in this country, and I need you to hear its name. If you are new to this ridge and this journal, and you mean to hold the old ways alongside me, stay with me. There are more of us than the store wants you thinking there are. Keep the old ways. They kept